Hi everyone, my name is Gali Eisman and I'm a program officer at Avichai. And this webinar is titled Fairy Tales and Real Stories in Jewish Education. The goal for today is for you to hear directly from one of Avichai's first grade in the area of online Jewish education, the Luxin Virtual Jewish Academy. You will learn about the value and impact of online Judaic studies in Jewish day schools based on case studies of Jewish schools of all different shapes and sizes. So for this webinar, we asked LVJA to address the following points in their presentation: the value of online Judaic studies for schools, lessons they can share, the relationship between the teacher and student formed during the online course, and why a school would choose an online Judaic studies course. First, I'd like to start off by introducing Chana Gurman and Jeremy Spear of the Luxin Virtual Jewish Academy. Chana is founder and director of LVJA, an award-winning online school of Jewish studies. She has 15 years of experience in education, leading curriculum development, professional development, and ed tech projects. Her graduate work is in educational technology and instructional design. Jeremy Spear is director of faculty development for Luxin Virtual. He has 20 plus years of experience teaching at some of the top New York Jewish day schools, and is a graduate of the New Jewish Teacher Project, where he trained as a teacher mentor. At Luxin Virtual, he mentors all the faculty to help acclimate to teaching online, working with them to build online teaching competencies and incorporate best practices into the classroom. So I'd like to hand the presentation over to Chana, who will go through a PowerPoint presentation about the fairy tales and real stories in Jewish education.
Thank you, Gali, and thank you everybody for joining us. Well, today what Jeremy and I thought to do was tell you some stories about day schools, and particularly we're not really interested in the typical fairy tales, the ones that have figures like this, or maybe some fire-breathing dragons, or some criminal masterminds. We're more interested in day schools, and day schools have their own share of villains or challenges that are particular to the field. Some of them, the ones that spring to mind right away are affordability and sustainability, but they're more, low budgets, perhaps some challenging students, or even some more challenging parents. So day schools have their own context, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. Sometimes in the day school world, what we'll hear about, and I think all of you as veteran educators will hear about certain educational trends or ed tech gadgets that are basically supposed to come in and in one fell swoop change your school into perhaps the magic kingdom. In other words, we're going to bring in this or that, trend or gadget, and we're going to have increased student engagement, and everything is going to be perfect. So our job tonight, Jeremy and I are going to talk about how online learning is not a fairy tale, and we can't expect it to be that way. But before we begin and we jump right in, we just want to tell you a little bit about Luxin Virtual. Gali told you a little bit about it, but just a few more sentences. We're a project of the Luxin Center that has worked to advocate for day schools for over 30 years. And our team is made up of veteran educators from community schools, Orthodox schools, middle schools, high schools, you name it, we're there. And we come together as a team to create and then teach these courses. And when we create these courses, we create various versions of the courses. So we have standard and honors, and then we have ones that are geared towards community schools and ones that are geared towards yeshiva schools. And in the first year, we started off, we piloted with 32 students, and now we have our annual enrollment is more than 500. And today what we hope to do is share some of our collective knowledge and experience and help that sort of pave the way to, if you're planning on bringing online learning to your school, to help that make the road towards that a bit smoother. So Jeremy, want to start with a story?
Yeah. Great. So as Chana mentioned, we're going to tell some real life stories. Again, we've worked with about 60 schools, so we have at least 60 stories. But tonight we're only going to share 4 of them. But again, please feel free to reach out to us, either by email on our website, that we could tell you more. Now, our first story deals with a large school, a large metropolitan area, hundreds of students. Now, the school boasts that they feel they reach about 90, even 99% of their students, which is quite an achievement. But the truth is, they really do an amazing job. And I think this story illustrates why. Of all their hundreds of students, they were concerned about two, and that's why they turned to us regarding Miriam and Hillel. Miriam was at the top of her class. Hillel was at more at the bottom of the class. But they shared one thing in common: a love for Jewish history, and the fact that they had maxed out on their school's Jewish history electives. And here our hero comes into the picture: the teacher administrator who just would not let those students fall through the cracks. And we were a good fit for this school because number one, our courses offer common multiple levels, so both students could take the same course if they wanted to, and we have different offerings, even just in Jewish history. Our hero set them up and gave the right support. Staff checked in every couple of days. And really amazing results. Now, when we said Miriam, they expected great results, and she followed through. Hillel was really the amazing part. He began to do things that he never did before, and even not just academically. He began to self-advocate certain life skills. He began to self-advocate. He began to get organized. And he started to push himself in ways that no one dreamed that he could. I'm just going to read the words of his mother when his mother called the school. You have made a major difference in my son's life. He's going to take this experience with him everywhere he goes. He now believes in himself. So again, we took this example because here we have a very localized problem. We have two students are thirsty to learn, but with the cold hard reality that you can't hire a teacher just for two students. And online learning provided an affordable solution and a high quality solution, which not only fulfilled the students, it actually transformed the student. And the nice piece about it is kind of an indirect benefit that this parent now becomes the school's advocate for life. And this is story number one about two students. Our second story takes place in another large school, this time about 1,000 students, K through 12. Despite its size, again, the school boasts of catering to every student's need. Now, they do this with, they have a sports program, an arts program, an ed tech program, and they literally try to make an individualized schedule. Again, there are about 1,000 students. Certainly on the high school level, an individualized schedule for each student. Now, Chana's going to show you a sample scheduling. You'll see just to pull this off, again, literally, this is what a schedule looks like. Is really a nightmare. And again, they turn to us, and I don't know if everyone's seen that kind of. Well, maybe you have, but it's where we're a great fit is that we really save them time and energy, because now instead of trying to fit, how could the student take this AP section that they want together with this biology and this sports, a student can take a course of interest with us, and it really helps them individualize their course offerings. And here, not only students were happy with the learning experience. Here again, here's another case of an added benefit. The parents were thrilled that the students were developing a connection with Israel. As we'll get into a little bit later, all our teachers are based in Israel, and students absorb that. So the parents were excited, and the administration was excited that the parents were excited about that, and that was a bonus for them. So again, we focus on these first two stories, two large schools with very localized problems, and we were able to provide a specific solution with online learning. Now, and we turn now for story number three to a small school, about 100 students. Small community, as Chana, I don't know how you found that picture. It in fact is in a college town. I think it was at Woodbridge, Connecticut. And we're privileged to have with us Melanie Wainick, who's the head of school at Ezra Academy in Woodbridge. to tell the story herself. So Melanie, thank you so much for coming. Can you hear? I'm looking for your picture on the screen. I see you. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I wish we had 100 students. We generally range between 80 and 88. And our situation is quite the antithesis to the two you just described. I have an amazing faculty, but in my middle school, I only have one Judaic studies teacher. She serves the community very well, but it is one person teaching Judaic studies from 6th through 8th grade. As much as I would love to have a second teacher who could engage our kids in text study at a high level, because our text study is at a high level, it's not within our budget to do that. So we tried Lookstein last year with our 8th graders. We tried it with a very advanced group of text study children and the less advanced group. We had some issues with the first class, but I will say that Lookstein was really amazing at meeting our needs, at listening to what went well and what didn't. And then the second semester, we tried again, and our kids had an outstanding experience and really gave them exactly what we were looking for. The opportunity to work with an amazing text teacher who engaged them, who got them excited about text study, and gave them a different perspective, which is hugely important and really unattainable for us. So we are planning next year once again to engage our 8th grade, which is a smaller class, but we will have the entire class learning together for both semesters. One of the other things that we've been thinking about is that we travel with another small school to Israel at the end of 8th grade. And we would love to find a way to engage that group of 8th graders with our 8th graders to do some online learning together.
So we're just going to have to make that happen, Melanie.
have to make that happen.
I should say that the first semester you worked with a cohort with 2 other schools.
Yes.
And next semester this semester was on your own because we
correct. And I think there was good in working with the other schools, but it was a little complicated for us, and mostly scheduling.
Right. No, that's always right.
Right.
Our schedule looks somewhat like the Sheck schedule you saw earlier.
Right.
Because we try and create these cohorts, and that we want the students to be in the same place, same time, and it's a lot of fun, but we manage somehow.
But it really was a fantastic experience. And my Judaic studies teacher, who supervises the class, was as enthusiastic as the students were. It was really a great thing for us.
Yeah, and I think the feeling is mutual, and we've enjoyed working with you. And we're going to have to get the second school involved next year.
Absolutely.
So that you heard that story was a question, I think, of budget and sort of transcending the limitations of the nature of a small school, and thinking about how online learning could help that. And now we're going to just talk about a fourth school that we've worked with. This is Epstein School in Atlanta. Wonderful school. I don't know who knows them from the audience, but they're really recognized as a great school, certainly in educational technology and in a lot of other things as well. And they really hold their own with other independent schools. And they're led by a wonderful team, very innovative, thoughtful team. And one of the strategic goals of the schools is to teach 21st century learning in all of their classes. And so they do a fabulous job throughout the school. And in Judaics, they were having a little bit of a challenge. And so what they decided to do was to enroll students in online course to make to create an authentic environment, to create a 21st century environment for them. And of course, they were they were working in collaboration with other schools, and they, participated in virtual chavruta and also online discussion boards, all those things. So we had the critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, but it was all within this environment, this 21st century environment. And so what they were able to do with online courses was basically align their Judaic studies curriculum with the rest of their school or their school mission. So that's just another way that online learning can help you. And while we're talking about these case studies or these stories, we're trying to give you some frameworks why schools choose online learning, particularly in Judaics. And what we wanted to do after sort of sharing those motivations was to explain or to share with you some of the lessons learned. Just to give you some practical lessons you could take back and think about if or when you decide to go on your own online learning journey. And the first thing that we thought to talk about was this issue of partnership. Online learning, no matter what platform you use or no matter what program you implement in your school, will only work in a partnership, as Melanie, very accurately described. It's never a plug and play situation. We have to remember that there's students at the receiving end of this, and they have opinions and they have needs, and we have to work to accommodate them. And so what research has shown, and what anecdotally our experience has shown, is that schools really have to be involved and have to support their students throughout the online learning process. And the more involved the school is, the more supportive the school is, the more successful the students are. And so what the school needs to do is to appoint this to somebody. Somebody has to become the online learning, coordinator, whatever it is. It could be something as simple as sort of changing around recess duty or lunch duty and giving this to them instead of that. But it can also be bigger than that. It could be, part of somebody's professional portfolio. And in our model, and in most models, I think, in online learning, the person that the school appoints goes through a short training process, and then that person is the contact person throughout the semester to tell us more about the students who are enrolled, to talk about any logistical or technical problems that come up, mission and vision of the school, those sorts of things, so we can make sure that we're all aligned. So Jeremy is going to talk about another challenge or another lesson learned.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about just two more lessons. One related to students, and one related to actually both really related to students. And then we're actually going to show you an actual course with some actual exchanges, and then we'll take questions. So we'd like you to think about, I guess, two things related to students. One is what kind of student takes online learning, what kind of student thrives in online learning. One thing I think sometimes schools have a hard time internalizing is that not every student is fit for online learning. I would say the typical student that thrives with this is the motivated student, the self-motivated student, and the independent student. Now, what would motivate a student? Again, it could be just the course material. It could be they're excited by doing online learning. It could be they just want to get out of class. I don't mean get out of class, I guess, just to kind of get out of class, but they want variety either from a certain teacher, from a face-to-face situation. But again, as Chana pointed out, the school support is critical. So just with the right support, again, not every student has to be self-motivated. Sometimes it just takes the right liaison, the right structure to generate that excitement and motivation. But so again, the general, it's not for everyone. Again, the general characteristics, I would say, motivation and independence. But there's certainly a range, and the school plays a huge part in identifying those and supporting those students. The second lesson is also to appreciate how different an online learning environment is from the classroom. Now, there are a lot of similarities, but there is I think a key difference. In other words, in some classrooms, some classrooms are more student-centered, some are less student-centered, but online learning by definition is designed as a student-centered experience. So for example, by the time the course begins, the entire course must be prepared. All the material, all the assignments, all the directions. So the teacher is no longer prepping before the lesson, no longer Xeroxing and running to do things right before the lesson. The teacher can really expend all of his or her efforts on engaging the students and tracking the students' progress. So really, just as a practical example, we ask our teachers to pick one or two of a list of goals for each student and to follow that student, at different stops along the semester. Now again, catering to student needs and tracking student progress, happens in classrooms, and that's not new in itself, but in a large classroom, it's hard to systematically and proactively, monitor each student. But in an online environment, because of the smaller size and the nature of the course, it really is a more reachable goal. And we actually evaluate our teachers on how they're doing, with that goal. Now, the last bit of this, the caveat of that is, because teachers are so invested time-wise in each student, we do see close relationships between the online teacher and student. To the point where, Melanie mentioned, maybe, getting together when they come to Israel and that. And we see all the time, students, visiting Israel, seeking out their teachers. We have students asking their online teachers for college recommendations, help them with their bar mitzvah speeches, all kinds of interactions that come from the relationship, from the online learning. Because again, see, there's some lessons, the partnership of schools, what kind of students, and the student-centered experience. We thought really maybe the best way to show you is actually show you a live course. This should take, I would say, about 7 to 10 minutes to go through the course, maybe even less. And then we're going to conclude with some questions. So Chana's going to help us. She's going to pull up the course and help frame it for us a little bit. Chana, so you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. So just before I begin, I just want to say that our courses are actually hosted in an LMS called Canvas, and many of you are probably familiar with it, but it's very, very slow when we screen share. So we're going to go to our old LMS, Blackboard, and just again show you just a few features from the course, so that you can understand a little bit more practically what we're talking about. The course that we're highlighting is called Quest for Eliyahu. It's a course that talks about Eliyahu Hanavi, or Elijah the prophet. And as you probably know, Eliyahu is a pretty central figure in Jewish folklore and even in the Jewish tradition. The Havdalah ceremony, the Passover Seder, and even circumcision. Eliyahu is there. But if you look at the Bible, the place where he comes from, he only appears in a few chapters. So it's a little bit odd that somebody who's only in a few chapters is now so central. So that's what this course looks at. The students are trying to find out, why does Eliyahu have this outsized role? What is his significance? So they begin the course just by looking at a small interactive museum. I don't know if you could see this, but it's a little bit of it's a virtual museum where the students basically get to see
Hi, welcome to the Biblical Museum and Studies.
Just stop this. They can see him in art and in music and in all sorts of in literature, and then they go from that and they study different. I'm sorry. They go and they study the biblical text, and they go study Hasidic folk tales, and then at the end of the course they come back and they curate their own exhibit on Eliyahu after having gone through this experience. So Jeremy is going to take us, now that you have that sense, he's just going to take you through a few places where you'll see how the teachers and the students interact. So take it away, Jeremy.
Okay, great. Now, again, in in any online course, I say it's like two basic models. Let's say is a synchronous model, a live model, where students, you saw a video there, an intro video. That's actually asynchronous, but by synchronous, I mean live, where students and teachers are interacting at the same exact time. And then there is the kind of the asynchronous, where students are working at their own pace, often at different time zones. Where they're working just online. So the truth is, another misconception, some people assume that the real way to form connections is through this live time. We in our course design offer a combination of the synchronous and the asynchronous, which we'll demonstrate. But the truth is, the bulk of the student-teacher interaction is asynchronous, which is why we feel really the power and the benefits of online learning really come through most significantly in that venue. So that's why I'm going to start with this reflection journal, which is an example of this asynchronous. Again, students are looking at this at their own time, submitting a post, and the teacher responds. So I'd like you to just to take 10 to 20 seconds just to read this on your own. Feel free on the chat. I think you'll see a lot of things that a lot of elements of effective classroom instruction. I'd like you to and then I want to point out why I think online might be different. So if you could skim it through, feel free to write in the chat if you want positive elements, effective elements that you see in the reflection journal. So again, as I mentioned, as I read this and I see clear instruction, I see modeling, with the example here. I see rubrics. I see an engaging question, and that you'll find I think in a classroom. Now, kind of the irony here is I'm actually. You can't tell from the blank wall behind me, but I'm in a high school in Jerusalem right now. Tomorrow at 10:45 local time, I will actually be teaching about Eliyahu Hanavi tomorrow by chance, and I will. I invite you to come 10:45 a.m. Jerusalem time. And the truth is that this kind of question is a typical question that I would start a unit with. The KWL. What do you want to know? What are you curious about? And but I think the power of this is number one. I will absolutely have students tomorrow. Who will be studying for their civics exam, trying to study for their civics exam in the back of the room. I'll ask a question. They might try to avert their eyes, and I hope I don't call on them. In online learning, there is 100% participation. You cannot pass. You can email your teacher if you have particular concerns, but everyone must participate. And in exchange, the expectation is, and again, we evaluate teachers on this, every student receives substantive feedback. So I just want to give you an example of an actual exchange. This is from Unit 6 of the course. Chana, do you have it, or I can pull that up if you want the... Okay, here we go. So again, the students are asked to consider if the people's repentance in chapter 18 is a fleeting repentance or a sincere repentance. And the student writes, if you could scroll down, oh, here we go. Student, I think these are all fleeting events. I just like it because this is an 8th grade student, it happens to be. If they were true transformations, why would they have been so fleeting? I like how he writes, I believe that no one can change in a moment. If change were so easy, why does anyone have bad habits at all? And then he goes on to say, not only are the people's repentance insincere, Eliyahu's repentance is insincere. Now, I like what this teacher does is, again, this is for every student. I agree with your thoughts about change. Again, modeling, how to write respectfully. How do we know if the people's changed or not? We have only Eliyahu's impression. What was Eliyahu's impression based on? It was pushing the student, to isolate, what his assumptions are, and is that his best guess? Is there a text that could corroborate that assumption? You seem to adopt the approach that Eliyahu was an unchanged prophet. This was one of the two approaches in the study guide. Why was it logic or text? And then finally, do you have a personal experience? Now, again, these things, asking students to apply, again, all these things happen in the classroom. The question is, what are the chances of it happening for every student? 100%.
I think the back and forth also, the constant back and forth.
Yeah, and the structure is meant for that. In other words, every student has a meaningful, again, hopefully, that's the goal, a meaningful exchange. Now, we're going to take a look where we're going to go now. So again, this is an example of student, teacher, written communication back and forth. Now, every unit starts with an intro video. We're just going to play this. It's about a minute or so. And I think this will shed some more light as well.
Yeah, I think we're not going to have time to do the whole minute.
Oh, okay. Well, what I want to show you is, you can't see she's in the backyard, but she's going to reference her sukkah. It's in the middle of Sukkot. You get a piece of Israel. You get a piece of what's going on. And she specifically highlights a student, Matan, who does an extra credit assignment. And again, like we said, the focus is on the written word, but again, it is important for the students to have FaceTime, synchronous and asynchronous. Aside from this intro video, the students have a live session with the teacher 7 times a semester for junior high school, 5 times a semester for high school. So again, we try to offer that balance. I think I'll just be remiss. I know time is short, but again, this is student-teacher relationships. A feature that is prominent in every unit is the discussion board. And that is where students not only interact with peers, but it's peers from different backgrounds, different locations. And I would like to, I don't know if you have that, Chana, or I could pull it up.
By the way, we're going back and forth because we can't show you a course that is populated. So we've sort of pulled things into a different course without real students. So that's why we're doing this.
But these are real exchanges. These are real
exchanges, exactly.
So here's an example where the teacher uses the weekly announcement. Again, another point of contact with the students to really hone in on the critical thinking skills that a discussion board can provide. And all the bold is she really takes it. We have a document called the discussion board tips, where we show students, we push them to learn paraphrasing skills, asking probing questions, disagree with your friend, but in a respectful way. Be open to changing your opinion in light of what your friend says. Now, again, all of these things can happen in the classroom, but again, it's these kinds of skills that the teacher will track the students systematically over the course. And again, it's hard to pick up now, but there's a real relationship. She refers to each student by name, what each student is contributing. You guys are awesome. Looking forward to another great week. And this, every unit has this discussion board, reflection journal, intro video. The nature of the assignments are varied. They change per course. The last thing, Chani, you'll see if we have time for, every unit ends with a survey, where again the students get a chance to weigh in with confidentially with the teacher what things are going well, what they liked, what they didn't like, and that is a feature of every unit as well.
Yeah, I just want to pipe in there and say that, especially with the discussion board, and we're building these skills, how to communicate with your peers, how to collaborate with your skills, and you really see when you have students and for a while, like we have, you see these learning curves. That the first week, the second week, the third week, they don't really know how to participate in the way that is, will make a fruitful discussion, but over time, you just see it improving significantly. You wanted to see sample student surveys. So this is also something that that you can do in your classroom. But usually you don't, I presume, you don't ask every single one of your students what they accomplished in, or how they felt about the specific, elements of your course every week.
Right. I like she changed her answer. Right.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so Jeremy, should we wrap up?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I need to take questions. Yeah.
Are there any questions?
Sorry, any questions for Lookstein or for Avichai for that matter? Thanks.
Gali, can I mention the Avichai promotion?
Please do.
Yeah. So just so one thing you'll see this on our website, and maybe Khan at the end, maybe we could pull up our contact information or Avichai is very generously providing schools that have not tried online learning before with one of Avichai's online projects, which were one of them. An $800 grant. An $800 grant it could be 2-3 kids in a course. So if if you're a part of a school and this is of interest to you, if you're on another end of the educational field and you know schools, the Avichai is generously offering what could come to a free pilot. School, just to try it. For schools that have experiments in the past, I think there are other incentives. But details about this, and really more importantly, I would say our course catalog and offerings, just to get a better sense. Please consult our website. That's looksteinvirtual.org. Now again, we what we didn't show is the study guides, where the students access the text and the learning. We'd love to give a fuller course tour. Really, any questions at all. You'll find a lot of information on the website, but please reach out to us or encourage others